Hi everyone, hello. Welcome to a new episode of the March8 Show. Long time no see. It's been a hot minute. I hope everyone is doing good. And welcome to today's new episode. We're actually doing a slightly different structure today. It's going to be a slightly different show. So I hope you will enjoy it. Please give us feedback in the comments and let us know how you enjoyed today's episode. So as always, I do ask for some audience interaction for those who are listening in. So let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what's going on, how your day's going, and send some comments about today's topic. Let's start some good conversation. So since our last show, I'm not even sure how long it's been, maybe a few weeks. A few things have happened. Of course, we have launched another edition of the March8 magazine. It's been super exciting. It's honestly, it's a gorgeous magazine, this one, and we couldn't be more proud of it. And I would like to welcome our editor-in-chief, of course, who is going to tell us all about the magazine and join us for today's show. So, of course, please welcome Lucy to the show.
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me back. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. I think we've been on holidays. We've been this like here and there. I don't even know, but it's been a little while. So I was wondering if for this, to kick off today's show, you could tell us about the recent magazine that we've launched and a little bit about how this relates to today's topic.
Absolutely. So the last issue, so the July issue of March8 actually launched a month ago today, which is crazy for me because it feels like only yesterday that I was like looking through the pages in absolute awe of it. But most of, as we can see, most people probably know that Emma Hernan from Selling Sunset was our cover star, and she gave us an amazing insight to what it's like to be an LA realtor, and just a little bit of behind the scenes of her empanada business back in Boston, and also what it's just like to be on the big screen. So she was absolutely amazing. But one of the main topics that we actually covered in this issue was women's health. So there's various different ways in which that popped up throughout the issue. One of my favorite features was Everyone's Business, and that basically looked at the different ways in which women face challenges, for example, endometriosis and menopause in the workplace, and how we can change that and adapt the workplace culture to be more inclusive for women. Esther Stanhope was another lady that I spoke to in the 8 Minutes with, and she is also known as the Impact Guru. So she spoke through her various tips and tricks as to how you can gain more confidence in the workplace, how you can make yourself feel a little bit better about yourself, and to really tackle those days when you're not feeling your most confident self. So although there are loads and loads of absolutely amazing features in there, if I do say so myself, they are probably one of my favorites, a couple of my favorites. But also I feel like I have to pay special tribute to our first Sport in the Spotlight star, Molly Renshaw, who is an Olympic gold medalist and a British Team GB athlete, and she is absolutely amazing. So if you haven't had the chance to check any of those out, then I would definitely recommend that you do so. If not, I do believe that we have a short video from Molly a little bit later on the show, so I'll give you a little bit of a taster for those who haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was a seriously fun video to film as well, so I'm excited to share it with everyone. But here is the gorgeous feature that we have in our magazine. So Sport in the Spotlight is every edition we showcase an amazing and inspirational woman in any sport, really. So we have here obviously swimming, we've had rugby, what else?
More rugby. Molly was the first one that was actually the Sport in the Spotlight. So we did a highlight Sarah Byrne last issue, the previous issue, but she was our cover star. But next issue, we actually have somebody from Formula E. So I'm not going to spoil who yet, but it is a lady that's been doing very, very well in motorsport, and that's all I can say for the moment. But I mean, I think Molly is fantastic, doesn't she? She's got such an amazing story as well. She's a true inspiration. So I think it's really lovely to have her in the first issue of Sport on the Spotlight.
Definitely. Yeah, it was really fun. We got to go up to Loughborough to record the video with Molly, which obviously we'll show a bit later. But honestly, it was incredible. From someone, actually, embarrassingly, I actually can't swim that well. So seeing someone do it as like a full-time job, gets paid for it, this is their life, like her form was, that's probably something that she considers for every minute of the day, is how well she swims. It was really incredible. And then literally me on the other hand would just can't swim.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love swimming, and it's quite funny because I was one of those. I don't think I'd ever thought I was going to be an Olympic swimmer, but I was one of those people where I did like the early mornings and the swimming every day, and it was hard. It was really difficult, especially obviously when you start. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head like when she said that she started, but she's so young, and when you think you've got your schooling and you've got education and GCSEs looming and A-levels and all these other things of what do you want to do in your life, and then you're kind of focusing on this, so absolute kudos to the amount of strength that takes to actually pursue that. So absolutely amazing girl.
Oh, definitely. And I remember she was kind of talking about obviously the support that her parents had to give. Like you said, the early starts, her mum used to take her, I think at like ridiculous 6 a.m. on a Saturday and go to sleep in the car, and then so she could take her back and carry on with their weekend kind of thing. So it's sport it takes over a massive part of people's lives, especially when it starts out as a hobby and then becomes a career. It's a really interesting transition that they have to go through, and obviously your health and your body and everything is just kind of becomes your life, right? So especially as a swimmer. But she's actually killing it right now in the Commonwealth Games. So funny enough that we obviously featured her. She's now swimming on the telly, which is really cool. Telly, that was super English of me, on the TV. So so she's awesome. But today's topic is about showcasing and championing women in sport. So a little bit later on, we are joined by a special guest for an interview discussing women in sport. Of course, we this past week have had some amazing and overwhelming support for the Euros, for England's winning. It was incredible. I particularly enjoyed the tournament. I thought the final was amazing. The support and outpour through celebrities and social media has been incredible. Massive congrats to the ladies, of course. But something that I wanted to touch on and start a conversation about really was the advertisements that we saw kind of happening throughout the tournament, and kind of especially the topics that were being brought to the big screen and to the big stage. So if you watched along in the final last week, you probably noticed that almost every advert during the break and even the advertisements around the side of the pitch was all for women empowerment, gender equality, and fighting gender stereotypes, obviously focused in football. And that was probably like my favorite thing actually out of the tournament was the realness and the honesty that was being brought forward and obviously kind of spotlighted throughout the games. And like honourable and a special mention to the mobile network EE. They did the advert with England men's football manager Gareth Southgate kind of speaking up against women kind of cyber hate online and things like that. So that was like something that I was fascinated by, and I particularly noticed. I just want to throw it back to you, Lucy. I didn't know how much of it you watched, but did you get a chance to kind of appreciate all of the like hype and outpour from the day?
Absolutely. I mean, I was obviously, I've been covering the Euros from the get-go, really. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where without being too biased, obviously we are from England, so you're always rooting for your home country to win. But I think there's always that little bit of doubt in the back of your mind. You're kind of like, oh, they've got a big game, but, they're up against a really good team. And I think it was just so inspirational to actually see that, like, watch how amazing they were, because it wasn't just just good football. Like it was phenomenal football. It was, and I think that's one thing that I think the Euros really stood for as well, is to actually prove that it's not a men's sport and that women are joining it. It is genuinely sport for everyone. And I think that's probably the most important thing that I actually learned from that. And also the EE advert, that was really hard to say.
Yeah,
I remember when I first wrote it, I saw it, I wrote an article on it, and the love that we got back from that feature, because I think so many people also connected with it as well, and to actually see how how some of the comments that these women get. And I mean, I remember seeing it with my friends and my boyfriend, and we, like, a few people were like, oh, you know, like, women don't get that, like, that's not realistic. And I was like, but it is, like, it genuinely is. And I think that's the England team did a really good job, and EU particularly, to show that, and to actually be like, you know, we actually need to respect all these women's, because it's not a men's game, it's everyone's game. So I think that's amazing. And I think it's also one of the things I love about it now is it wasn't just like a hype that happened like the day after or the day after that. I mean, I'm still seeing it on my social media pages, and, you know, people are still absolutely loving the Lionesses. And I think it's a really important time for us to be able to understand that we've actually just witnessed history as well. And I mean, England have never won the Euros before. And the last greatest win for England's men was in like 1966. So it was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So I absolutely loved it. I mean, I wasn't a massive football fan beforehand. I think that's maybe because I didn't like watching the men. I can definitely get behind. I can definitely get behind the women more. Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely, I love it as well. Like, obviously, this is a very serious topic, but some of the conversations I have with my male friends always end up being quite funny. Like, you know, people always say that the guys roll around on the floor and they're a bit dramatic and things like that. I just think it's there's two ways to look at it, but definitely the whole thing was massively empowering, and especially focusing on the Lionesses themselves. I know that they recently signed that document, which obviously went to literally the Prime Minister to say we want all girls to have at least 2 hours worth of sports or PE a week, and one of them can be football, or we encourage girls to play football more. So I love that they are using this platform, this opportunity to massively be advocates and push forward sports for, you know, young girls, and hopefully inspire them. And I think that they already have done that, but I think this will definitely lead on throughout the next generation, really, which is just massively important. But yeah, following on from that, as you can see, the TikToks here were massively popular. That not only is the squad like some awesome girls, but the content that came out of it and the message that they were sending across was incredible. So we just wanted to showcase kind of the women's football team a little bit there, and celebrate their win and kind of the popularity they got from it, which is just incredible. So we are now obviously going to move into our conversation a little bit more about women's football and the history of it, and how it's kind of evolved a little while over the years. So following on from the discussion, the Women's Football Association was actually founded in 1969. And just to put that into perspective, England is the joint oldest national team in football, and England's men played in the world's first international football match in 1872. Not that it needs to be sold to anyone, but there is, of course, a huge need for this sort of discussion and kind of perhaps realization, you know, around celebrating women in sport and kind of championing them, and making sure that people realize the kind of like gender disparity, if you will. So we've kind of gathered a little bit of information, some facts to discuss. So I was just going to read them off, and Lucy, you can tell me obviously what you think, what your thoughts are, if you knew about them, because I think it's important that this information has been kind of showcased at this point. So I thought this was interesting. The first women's football match was held in 1895, which was between North and South. So I'm guessing
North
Britain. Yeah, England. I don't know. Yeah. And they won 7-1. The North did. So,
wow.
I mean, they smashed
North
them.
But,
yeah. But yeah, 1895. I mean, what do you think about that?
That's insane. I wonder when the first men's football game was as well. That would have been really interesting to actually see like the comparison of that as well. But yeah, that's really cool. So that's actually that's quite a long. It's been around for quite some time. But am I right in thinking that there was a ban as well? So
Yeah, exactly. So the first men's international match was 1872. So there was like a 23-year difference between the first games. But one was international, one wasn't. But yeah, you're correct in saying that there was a ban as well. So 26 years later, in 1921, the FA actually banned women's football. And this is their quote. This is their reasoning, is because it was quite unsuitable for females and ought not to be encouraged. Which is just is very interesting. There's not much of a reason there, but there was obviously actually a year before this, there was, I think, a record attendance of like 50,000 people watching a women's football game in London, and then surprisingly they banned it.
I mean, I have actually heard about things like this, but I mean, it is literally only just because of the Lionesses win. It's only been a very recent piece of knowledge that I've obtained. But I mean, from what I remember reading, is that women, when men went to war, they were actually encouraged to play football more. So then it's actually really interesting that it was actually banned slightly after that, because when the men came back from war, if I've got my dates correct, that's actually really harsh as well. And I mean, it's one of those things where, like you said, that they don't actually give a proper reason for it. So it must have been really hard to kind of be encouraged to participate in the sport. And you said there was a record attendance, so it was obviously very popular. And for it then to then just get shut off, because I can't remember the phrase that you used, but it was not
quite unsuitable for females.
Quite unsuitable for females. I mean, it's a very posh way of saying it, isn't it? But it's incredible, isn't it? Because you just can't imagine saying that to somebody now. Like from our generation, born in the 90s, you know, like you can't imagine saying to somebody you can't play football because it's unsuitable. Like it doesn't make sense. yeah, and it's really sad, honestly, that they were doing so well and then it got chopped off. So.
Oh, definitely. And you're not wrong about the whole kind of men going to war thing. So I think essentially what happened, to kind of sum it up, is when the men were sent away to fight, the women kind of had to take over and do these kind of, and be like all-in-one workers and do the jobs that men were doing. So like heavy machinery, working in factories, working with like toxic chemicals, because obviously the safety regulations back then were not the same. So these jobs were obviously originally made for men to be doing them, but when they went away to war, they had to be taken over. And it was actually advised by health and welfare, like government advisory boards, that women were to play football or play some sports in order to kind of improve their well-being. So which I think is fascinating, the fact that kind of back then they kind of recognized the like well-being factors of sport, and how important it is that whether young boys and girls actually get out and kind of have some exercise and things like that. I mean, if that's what they're encouraging, then great. I think we should be doing the same thing right now. But they were kind of treated it as a break, like a lunchtime, like go out and kick some ball, things like that. So definitely an interesting similarity to kind of what we have nowadays, like at schools. I think maybe we should encourage that a little bit more, especially with some younger girls. But
I mean, I think what I find fascinating about that is the fact of like they did recognize the well-being, how it can positively impact women's well-being, but then when they thought they were overstepping the mark for men, it was kind of like, oh, your well-being doesn't matter anymore. So sorry, but you've done your job. You've done your job now. You can go back to what you were doing before. So makes you angry, doesn't it?
It does. But it is fascinating to now see what is coming out of women's football, and it has been around for quite a long time, as you can see, but there were just a few reasons why here and there it didn't quite kick off, and those, I guess that's one of them. And I think now
sorry, I was going to say, it's been over 100 years, hasn't it? It's been just over 100 years since they got banned, and then 100 years later, plus one. We actually won. So that's a nice little take, isn't it?
Well, 100 years since the ban, which is kind of crazy, because for half of that it was banned, which is nuts. but yeah, I think now we are going to jump into a short ad break, just a short little 5-minute video we have to play here for you. And then when we're back, we are going to start our interview with the amazing Jackie. So please enjoy this video. This is the Molly Renshaw Sport in the Spotlight video, and we got the privilege obviously to go there and sit down with her, share her story, and feature her in the latest edition of March 8 magazine. So enjoy the break, and I will see you all when we get back.
So my name is Molly Renshaw. I've been swimming competitively now for the past 10 or 11 years. I basically just got into swimming just because my parents wanted me to learn to swim. So I think around the age of 2, 3, I started having kind of like swimming lessons. So I then went on to join my local club, which was called Ripley Rascals. And I swam there up until the age of about 10, until I got scouted to join the kind of Derbyshire county group, which is called Devonshire Excel. So I started part-time there when I was in like year 6 at school, I think. But I had like an amazing group of people around me. We were all very like a similar age and all quite young and aspiring to be swimmers hopefully one day. So yeah, I kind of started my swimming career there, I guess I'd say. And that's when things started to get a little bit more serious with the early mornings, and I started doing gym sessions around the age of 14, 15. I kind of had a really good year in 2011 where I'd been kind of pottering along and I'd been making like nationals and national finals and medaling at Midlands regional kind of level. And in 2011, my aim going into like the British trials was to make European juniors that year. And I ended up dropping about 10 seconds off my best time, and I actually made the world senior team as well the same year. So it kind of like my whole career kind of escalated quite quickly. Like I'd gone from kind of swimming 6, 7 times a week as just kind of fun with my friends, kind of enjoying it and doing quite well, to kind of it taking off really in one summer where I was away competing at a junior level. Then we went to Shanghai over July, August time, and I competed on a world stage of like Becky Adlington and Jo Jackson. So as a 14-year-old, it was quite daunting and quite unexpected. But I think having that kind of experience at such a young age, kind of what has allowed me to have longevity in the sport, and it kind of let me grow that confidence and help me grow within the sport. And so I feel like every year since then, every team I've made, I've kind of just grown, and now I'm kind of one of the senior members of the team. And so it's quite nice to now be on the other side and see like the younger swimmers coming through and hopefully like try and guide them, because I know at that age I was so scared, and like I had people that looked after me. So like now I'd love to be that person that can look after them, I guess.
Just checking her whole career, this is absolutely the biggest success.
Obviously my parents were there throughout my whole career. They're the main reason I'm here where I am today, because when you're at school, my mum was the one who'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She'd drive me to training. She'd sleep in the car, bless her, whilst I was training. She used to have a little sleeping bag, and she used to recline her seat. So yeah, like obviously without my parents like supporting me through them like younger years, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. I think men have been quite dominant within the swimming world for quite a few years now. You know, we went through a phase from maybe 2008, 2012 where the women were really ripping things up. We had Becky Adlington, we had Jo Jackson, we had Caitlin McClatchy, kind of quite big names who are consistently winning medals on like a world stage. And kind of since like Adam Peaty, Duncan Scott's come around, it's kind of shifted a bit more to the male side. I think within the last year or two, the women are slowly starting to creep back, so that's quite nice. So it definitely feels a bit more equal these days. But I think we are lucky that we're in a sport where it is equal pay, it is equal opportunities and things like that. Like I know there are sports where that still isn't a thing. So yeah, I think compared to other sports, we're in a very grateful position to be women, and we're supported by other women around us, and even all the guys here are really supportive of us and they want us to all do well. So yeah, I think we're lucky that the sport that we're in is fairly equal. My biggest learning through from a whole career has been to just enjoy the journey. Like, I think there's been times where I've taken it too seriously and things haven't gone my way, and I think you almost have to take a step back from the sport and kind of realise, yes, it's a competitive sport and you do it and you train so many hours a week to get the best results, but equally, if you're not enjoying it, I don't think you'll be performing at your best. So kind of my motto, as cheesy as it is a happy swimmer is a fast swimmer. And so throughout like the past 10 years of my career, I've just tried to live by that and kind of stay as happy as I can inside and outside of the pool. And I tend to find when things are working well together, that's when I get the results like come competitions. So I think just keeping a good balance, not putting too much pressure on yourself and just enjoying the journey.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I love that video. It's kind of like emotional at the end. I wasn't sure if I was gonna come back with a little tear, but I was good. But yeah, that was obviously Molly Renshaw, who is a GB Olympic swimmer. I think swimming is a really interesting sport because sometimes it's not one of them like first go-to thoughts of the mainstream sports. So it was really interesting to get an insight from her about how she kind of got into it, and obviously, like she said, it's kind of more equal in that side of things. So it's always interesting to get that interesting balance as well. So I do just want to give a few shout outs to some people in the chat because I feel I've ignored them. So we've got Linda, hello, thank you for joining us. We've got Yvonne, she's joining us from the car, which is fantastic. We have Connor and Bex and Matt, who we all know. So thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you're having a great day. We are now actually going to jump into our interview portion of today's show. So Lucy, why don't you take it away and introduce our guest for today?
Absolutely. So today we have Jackie Thornton, Head of Development at Norwcih City Football Club, and we are going to discuss some of the phenomenal milestones that she has seen in women's football. So I'm incredibly pleased to welcome Jackie to the stage.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, how are you? All good?
Yeah, we're really good, thank you. Yeah, really good to be back and really good to be having this conversation about women's football. So could you just kick us off by actually telling us, like, you obviously must be still buzzing from the Lionesses win. What did that mean to you as an advocate for women's football?
I got really emotional when you said about that last bit. You got really emotional. You get emotional because you care, and I was so proud. And I don't think I thought that day would ever happen, that there would be that many fans, that much press coverage and all the support from the nation coming together. I still get emotional. I was like, yeah, it was just such an amazing day, the final, but even, the whole journey. And it was just so good to see so much. There's been so much work over the years, so many battles and so much determination to get women's football and women's sport to this point. It's just amazing for all those people that have advocating it for so many years to sort of now go, actually, that was really worth it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about it is I was actually in London during the day of the event, and there were so many people that were wearing their jerseys and like bringing it home and all this kind of thing. It was like you just said, I didn't expect that. And then obviously Wembley had so many, I think it was like 87,000, is that correct? Which is so close to capacity. It was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it? Like the actual how the nation just came together to actually just support the Lionesses. It's what you'd hope would happen. I think it was so lovely.
I think it was just such a lovely atmosphere. But what I also really liked, it wasn't just about women and girls being at Wembley. It was the pubs and people of men, getting behind, because that's what it needs even more of. It needs everybody to get behind it, not just us women keep saying this is amazing, this sport, and how great these players are. But you have to see it to believe it and to be it, and the same old things. But even for men to be able to see it and actually appreciate the sport and the professionalism and how athletic these girls are, I thought was even more important, and just having girls and women watching at Wembley. It was just such a great experience, and one I definitely won't forget.
Absolutely. And what would you say, because obviously so many more people, both men, women, boys, watched and supported the Lionesses than we expected. What do you think this actually means for women's football, and how do you think this is kind of will pursue further careers?
I really do think it will elevate the sport. Interesting, we had Lauren Hemp come. Obviously, she's a Norfolk star here, and we brought her to the game at Carrow Road at the weekend. My husband hosted her with Delia in the director's lounge, and we went and saw her afterwards. And I was talking to her about, how much media coverage she'd had, and she said, actually, I'm really tired, but I know I've got to do this because it will help the sport in the long term. And I'm not saying it might not ever happen, but you've got to ride that wave of positivity and success in order for it to go to new heights. There's times when people say, well, everyone wants to play tennis for whilst Wimbledon's going on, but everyone forgets about it afterwards. So we have to keep that conversation going. We have to keep highlighting the brilliant games, and we have to keep getting more funding and all the things that we need to keep that momentum going, to make sure that women's football and girls football continues to grow, and other female sports can learn from that as well.
Definitely. I think as well, we kind of as a nation came together, and we've recognized that this is kind of history in the making. So I wondered, Jackie, if you could tell us a little bit about, how long you've been working at Norwich City, and how you've seen the kind of evolution of women in sports over the past how many years.
Yeah. Well, my first introduction, my dad is a massive Norwich City fan. He'd take me to games, and I'd always be part of the club. So it was always in my blood, and I always wanted. So my family were brilliant and always encouraged me and my sisters to play football. But when we got to high school, similar thing. No, girls can't play football. It's only the boys. You go and play netball. And that we said, no, we're not doing this. We'll set up our own team. So we set up our own team. We continued and played football to a fairly good level, went to university, and I played for England universities and then managed that team. And that got me into coaching. So I then went out to the States coaching, and it was so different out there. At that point that, women's soccer was huge. And it was just completely there was more women and girls playing it than men, and boys. So I came from that excitement of it, this amazing, everybody getting behind it. And then I came back to the UK, did my degree, and then I wanted to do more coaching. So I started off as the girls and women's development officer for Norwich City Football Club and the County FA. So it was a joint role. It was one of the first ones in the country. So that was in 1998. Feels like I'm really old. So I became that girls and women's development officer. And it was at that point I was just banging the drum of equal opportunities and making sure girls could play, working with the leagues to try and make sure it was available for everybody. But I sort of quickly fell into another role. Not quickly, but girls and women's football has always been my passion. It's, what's in you. But in order for it to grow and us to do more, we had to find funding. And I was a bit more skilled in that area as well. So they said, right, well, Jackie, you can go and write all the funding applications. And then I fell into that role. So what it meant is that I could get more money to do more programs that helped more people. So, so I started that role in fundraising. And now my role as sort of head of development means that I can look at strategy, I can look at funding, I look at all of those different things to pull those strands together to make sure as the foundation and working with the football club that we have a clear plan of how we're going to make sure that as many people as possible have access to sort of women's football, but disability sport and all those different things that we provide here at the Community Sports Foundation. So, that's sort of my journey. But, that's why it's been a long time coming, but to see that success on the pitch just means so much to so many people.
That's amazing. I think you've summed that up really beautifully. But how do you kind of see this as a starting point as well for women's football, and where would you like to see women's football continue on in the next 5, 10, however many years?
I think there's obviously two sort of different levels. A grassroots level at schools, we need to be better at encouraging many girls' teams. My daughter's school, brilliant. You know, she probably plays more games of football than she does probably going to lessons. And she loves, you know, the PE side of things. Other schools are not so great. And it's a battle, and it shouldn't have to be a battle. It should be something that is equal. So at a local level, we need to make sure that those opportunities are there, and facilities. Some facilities that we have across the country aren't great. We've been working with our facility here at the Nest. So it's a £6 million facility that we've built and we've fundraised for. And that's the home of Norwich City Women and many of our girls' programmes. So they don't have to feel that they get the second best, you know, sort of the low-end, low-quality facilities. They should be encouraged and inspired by playing at great places to continue playing. So I think there's that part. I think in the women's Super League and all of that, there has to be a time where we have to have more commercial investment. And you mentioned about adverts on the telly. I know Lauren said she's doing a piece on Hollyoaks this week, so she's doing a little piece on there. So there's that element of commercializing the game, because that becomes the income to make the sport sustainable. So equal funding. So whether you win the women's or the men's championship, FA Cup, all of those things, you know, we have to make them the same. It's the same prize money, same amount of investment. Media is huge. With that media coverage that we've had over the Euros was brilliant. But will they keep that up and carry on showing the games at the right times? And clubs. So Norwich City Women have just been taken over by Norwich City Football Club. Back in the day, they were very voluntary. So when I started, I think you've got a photograph, but when I first started, we had hand-me-down kits from the first team, as you can see on the right there. Look at those terrible kits. So those are probably the first team's kit that were 3 years old that they'd obviously thrown down and no longer used. So the women picked those kits up and ran with it. But more support from the clubs and giving them access to the professional environments like the men have is great. But things like this is, you know, elevating women, motivating women, and supporting each other is another key part of, you know, women backing women and trying to elevate the game and continue it. And that other photo is us on the pitch on Sunday after the game with my family. So we're all complete football crazy, and sort of that is our life with Lauren on the pitch. So it's quite a nice little photo there.
Yeah, that's very sweet. But I think, I mean, it is massively important. I think what you say about funding and these equal opportunities in terms of pay is fascinating. I think me and Lucy were watching this video the other day. It must have been a TikTok about how I think Ronaldo makes 30k in a day, and that's the salary of a women's player a year. So just that difference is almost hard to believe and actually realize that is kind of the reality of things. And there was a video of women England captain kind of talking about, well, why? Like, we can do the exact same things. You know, we can be all over Instagram. We can get deals, sponsorships, things like that. That, you know, there is nothing stopping it now. It hopefully is going to be able to push that forward, what we've seen, which is fantastic. And I want to just bring up this question we've got in the chat from Jessica. She's got a question for you, Jackie. So this is regarding funding. She said, what funding opportunities are there for over 18s women's club? So she plays for a ladies team and they're struggling with finding sponsorships, and she wondered if you had any tips.
So there is a pot of money. I'm not sure what level that they're playing at. So the FA have brought out some grants, which is for clubs to apply for, which will help the fan experience and gaining more supporters. I'm not sure whether in that category that they'd be able to apply for. So there's certain levels that you can apply for. Some good places to go is actually like Sport England's Awards for All. They're quite good. There's obviously that's sort of the grant side of things. And then really it's about, if you're looking for commercial support, sponsorship, it's hugely about relationships and getting people to see it, believe it, and get them to games, entertain them at a game and show them what it's about and how brilliant it is, and build those relationships. And also what you can give back. Go out with a good package of what do they get in their return. Don't just treat it as a donation. Treat it as a commercial transaction where what are you going to give them as a business in return for that profile or that branding or awareness of their company. So really make that tangible. And it is possible. We've had a number of brilliant supporters who have helped Norwich City Women and are now Nuffield Health, for example. You know, they've come forward and said, right, we want to be your shirt sponsor because we want to be able to gain more women to come into our health clubs. You know, and that's a great mechanism to do that. So go out there and give it a whirl. But it's all about relationships, building it with people to get them to buy into the game. And now's a good opportunity for it.
Absolutely. And I guess that's something that Lauren's really doing as well. So obviously we saw the photo of you and Lauren earlier, and obviously you've mentioned how she's got her deal with Hollyoaks and everything. How has it been to see her evolve into the player that she is now? And how has she been working hard to continue raising the profile of women's football?
Lauren's a really interesting person because we first had her sister, Amy. And Amy was an amazing player. And we were like, wow, this, you know, she's pretty special. And then suddenly tagged along was a little sister coming along. And then we saw her play and went, oh, my word. She's like, you know, this is a different level. And she was this tenacious little thing, but very quiet as well, and very shy. We'd take her on tour and she'd be so shy that she wanted to go home and being very homesick. And we spoke to her parents at the weekend and said, one of the best things we did was push her to go to Bristol and go out of her comfort zone to be able to be more resilient, to cope with everything. But it's great to see her getting these opportunities. And obviously the income that she's receiving is better than it ever would have been. But hopefully with commercial deals and things, she'll be able to elevate that.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. It's been really great to see what's come out of this tournament. And I don't think we've even seen half of it yet. So it is massively exciting. I think maybe it's time we kind of wrap today's conversation up a little bit. We are hitting the 45-minute mark on today's discussion. But I mean, Jackie, I just wanted to throw kind of the floor over to you. Was there anything you wanted to discuss, maybe about the foundation, anything about kind of just advocating women's sports? Obviously, now you've got a little bit of a platform if you want to say anything. So I hand the floor over to you.
I've got a funny cough.
Sorry,
we're really
putting on the spot.
No, I think you know, we're excited about. Oh my goodness, sorry.
Oh my God, are you okay? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot while you were coughing. My bad.
I apologise.
No, you're all good. You're fine.
No, I think we're excited about what we can do for girls football and what we do next as a foundation. And we need people like you, BizClick and March8, really pushing for everything that we can do in the future. So a big thank you.
Of course. No, absolutely. And we appreciate you massively for coming on the show today. To have some kind of expert advice and opinion on the impact of what we've actually just witnessed last week. So we massively appreciate you joining us, Jackie. Thank you so much. We'll obviously be in contact. And I don't know if you just saw the comment that Jessica said in reply to your advice. She said, thank you, Jackie. Really great advice. Relationships are so vital, as our current sponsors are all known to us personally. They are in the SEC WFL Premier. So if that means anything to you, maybe it'd be great for you guys to connect. But thank you again, Jackie, for joining us. I'm sure we'll be in contact and speak to you very soon.
Thank
you
you
so much, Jackie.
Awesome. Well, that's so fascinating, because we watch it from such a consumer perspective, don't we? That having that kind of insider knowledge is really interesting. So, yeah, I think it's time we kind of wrap up. Lucy, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to add?
No, I just think it's really fantastic that we've been able to actually celebrate the Lionesses even more and just raise the profile of women's football. And I hope that we continue to do that, as Jackie said. I hope that we don't kind of like drop the microphone on that and hand it back over to the men. I hope that we find a stage for ourselves, or we found a stage for ourselves, and I hope we're able to continue that.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think just a final point, obviously March 8, a lot of our content is focusing on kind of showcasing and highlighting women in sports. So every month in our magazine, we do highlight sports, in the spotlight. So it's a massive thing that we love sharing about and are happy to get involved in. And obviously being a Norwich-based company, for the very reason of bringing on Jackie to kind of discuss and share what they're doing with the foundation is obviously something very dear to our hearts. So it's incredible that we were able to discuss it on today's show. I think that's time. We better wrap up now, because I'm actually getting a bit of a dry throat as well. So yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining us. It's been an incredible episode. I hope you enjoyed. Please keep the conversation open. Feel free to reach out to any of us for any questions or for any collaboration. We would be keen to get involved. So yeah, that's it from me and Lucy. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next March 8 show soon. Bye bye.
Bye all.